When we're working with any animal, particularly dairy cattle like this, we want to be careful about the footing for two reasons. One, the animal can slip down on slick surfaces, but even more important to me is the individual leading the animal can easily slip on slick surfaces as well. So anytime I'm working a young animal or an animal I'm not sure how they're going to react, I want to be on a dirt surface where they have good footing, the individual leading them has good footing. If they do happen to bolt, she has a chance of keeping her feet under her while she gets that animal to stop. And as we go to shows, if cattle are not used to slick surfaces, that's even more dangerous. Dairy cattle, a lot of them are raised around concrete pathways and alleyways, and so they tend to be better at walking around on a concrete surface. When we're grooming livestock, it's part of the gentling process, but we do need to do it in a manner that's safe. If the person handling the animal is big enough and confident enough, they can hold the animal and groom them. If not, you probably need to tie them up and then groom the animal. The thing you want to make sure of, if two people are working on an animal, you're both working on the same side. If they jump away from the groomer, they're not going to hit the person on the other side. So if I was going to brush this calf while I'd have held her, I'd want to come on this side, but brushing that hair and grooming them helps get the animal accustomed to a person being around them. Now, if she were going to brush the animal herself, she'd need to turn around, face him, hold the lead rope up here with her left hand, and then brush with her right hand, and then switch to the other side. So you wouldn't think it would be a big deal on an animal this size, but they can still lurch forward and knock this young lady down. As we take these calves to show them, we want to get them acclimated to different surroundings. So dogs barking, racket, all that's good when we're trying to prepare an animal to go off somewhere to show. The first time we show them, we also want to take them in a small place, a small show, just to get them out and away from the house and exposed to new surroundings. So anytime we can take them away from home and expose them to other noises, sounds, and sights, it makes them safer as they get older and bigger. We want to make sure that when we tie an animal, we tie them to something very secure. We want to tie them high enough that they can't step over that lead rope. If we're going to be leaving them there very long, we may tie them a little bit lower so they can lay down. But if we're working on them and grooming them, we'd like to bring these animals up pretty close to the fence. Take and bring the lead rope around that pipe. We're going to shorten her up just a little bit to keep her head where she can't get it down, where we can work on her. Then I like to put a slip knot of some kind in there, where if we do need to release the animal, all we have to do is pull on one end of it and it comes untied. And if you're going to be leaving the animal there, I like to bring that end back through just so that animal can't untie themselves by chewing on the rope. So in that case, you can pull on that lead rope and untie them. The next thing you want to be concerned about is actually when you're leaving, because as you walk by the animal, you once again run the risk of being kicked. But while you're in this area, they can also pinch you against the fence. So you want to make sure that when you tie them, you get out of there as quickly as you can after you tie them securely. So once they are tied, walk away from them at an angle. That way they can't kick you. When you approach an animal that's tied, you want to make sure that they are aware of you being there. This little heifer turned her head and looked at me, so I know she knows I'm here, so I won't startle her when I walk up. Because her hips kind of tip this way, I want to approach from as close to the fence as I can, go to her shoulder and untie them, and then walk out of there as quick as you can. You just don't want to stay in an area where an animal can pinch you against the fence or run over you when you're trying to work with them. If that animal happens to throw a fit while they're tied to that fence, you want to be very careful. The thing you should do is crawl over the fence and then untie the animal. When you do that, they may bolt and run backwards. Then you run the risk of injuring people that are standing around. If you happen to be over there and untie them, you'd want to try to keep the rope coiled around this pipe, so if they did lurch backwards, it wouldn't cause any injury to someone else. There may come a time when the match between the individual and the animal is not a good one. And that has to be a decision that the parent or guardian makes, to where if it puts the child at danger, that you abandon that project and search for another animal or a different project to utilize. You don't want to quit too early on an animal a lot of times, but you don't want to cause the fear to set up in the individual showing it either, because that may affect them for the rest of their life in dealing with livestock. And so often we get wrapped up in trying to make that project work that we put the children at risk a lot of times trying to stay with it a little bit too long. But as long as they're making progress, I'd say stick with the project. It's just when it gets unsafe that you need to abandon it. We have to implement animal health practices on livestock show projects. Injectable vaccinations, treatments for whatever might be needed are also best management practices. But you have to consider if that animal associates some of that with the exhibitor, they may resist them approaching them. So a lot of times the implementation of any animal health products probably should be done by an adult or by a veterinarian. Let them learn from the process, but actually have somebody else administer animal health products. There is quite a bit of difference between what we do in the show side of things and making that transition into dairy production. Although we learn how to work with that animal and understand their behavior, once we go in a production setting, it's a little different. Those cattle respond different, particularly when they go into production and having calves. The other side of that is because we get so accustomed to these cattle being so gentle and so easy to work with, we become a little too familiar with them sometimes, particularly when young people then go into the production setting. Those cattle may not perceive them the same way that this show animal did. In the dairy side of it, the most dangerous thing around any livestock operation is actually a male of a dairy species, whether it be Jersey or Holstein or whatever. They're very aggressive, very unpredictable in their behavior. The leading cause of death relative to livestock handling is dairy bulls. A lot of dairies don't even keep them on the premise because of that. If you go to a dairy and you enter a pen, we always want a parent supervising that, and you sure want to make sure that you know what's in it and make sure that you have an escape route when you do.